Welcome back to Built with AI. Today we're talking to Patrick, who's a PM at Zillow. Patrick has built an AI dictation application that allows him to provide voice updates that get transformed into updates of his preferred preferences. So these would be updates that go to executives, stakeholders, and other folks that he cares about.
And then I just clicked submit, and then it just formatted the whole thing. Completely blew my mind. This used to take me 2 to 3 hours to do this update.
Yeah.
Now it takes like 15 minutes.
He built this himself inside of Replit after taking one of my courses in order to upskill himself on AI.
So just for people who are not technical, I don't understand half of this.
I think this episode will be really great if you're closer to the beginning of your journey, because Patrick is one of those people who started with a non-technical background, but then quickly moved over into building full products himself.
A lot of times I need to ask it how it's going to do it first, and then I let it do it.
And so you'll get to see exactly how Patrick plans and ships features, as well as some tips and tricks along the way.
Planning, context, increments, break it down. It feels slow, but it'll pay off in the long run.
I'm Colin, a health tech PM and chronic side hustler turned solopreneur. I've built SaaS apps that have made $0, hundreds of dollars, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm excited to bring you stories of folks who've done the same.
I will say as a PM, it really helps you empathize with engineers when you just give them like open-ended requests.
Excited to dive in, so when you're ready, I'll see you there. So Pat, you were one of the students in the initial cohorts of AI prototyping, which is a course that I've been teaching on Maven for a bit. I think you've gone a bit beyond the scope that we covered in the course. So now you're kind of like building or vibe coding products, mostly on Replit, and you've done a couple, right? Like 2 or 3 at this point.
Right. This is the second. The first one I kind of got stuck on. Maybe I'll go back to it. This one, I've got a second one I'm working on that I'm able to actually make some progress on.
Cool. And just so folks know, like, what's your background? How technical are you? And just like, what was kind of the process to get started with the tools? And then we'll go through like what you're building right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a product manager at Zillow. Most of your US viewers probably know what that is. I'm sure you guys have heard it in Canada as well. And I work in the rentals business at Zillow. Been a product manager for like 6 years or so now. I guess technically I have a technical background. I'm a civil engineer by trade. So I worked in construction and engineering, like that type of engineering, I guess, earlier on in my career. But I don't have any like coding experience, any computer engineering or computer science experience. The only like code I can write is SQL. Just as a PM, we query data sometimes. I can write SQL, but that's about it. So it's not like I'm looking at the code files and I can understand them all. I primarily use Replit. As you talked about in your class, that one made the most sense for me because the database is fully integrated, whereas with some of the other tools, you have to connect to Supabase. And so with Replit, it kind of met the needs. It did all of the things I needed to. It was going to eliminate like complexity there. And so I've been primarily using Replit. Like as this product gets more complicated, I might start moving into Cursor. We'll see. I've heard that Cursor, obviously it's for more like robust use cases. So I might start using that soon, but for now, still in Replit.
Cool. Yeah. So you're talking a little bit about you're building a product. You want to tell us a little bit about what it is, and then maybe do a quick demo of how it works.
Yeah, sure. So the product is called Vibe Updater. The reason it's called Vibe Updater is a lot of your viewers and listeners probably know Vibe coding is a thing now. There's like Vibe marketing. And so to play on that trend, I'm calling this Vibe Updater. And essentially what the tool does is it helps you draft a weekly or biweekly or regular update that PMs often have to send. A lot of PMs are used to sending these on like a Friday or first thing Monday morning, kind of recapping what happened over the last week or two. Where this product came about is I started writing an update at my current job. Like a lot of PMs, I've gone through various iterations of what type of updates do I write, what resonates with people. And I went to a PM session at Zillow where this senior PM was kind of talking through how he stays on top of stakeholder alignment. And he showed us his update format, and it really resonated with me. And so I started sending that. I started getting good feedback. And at some point, Zillow rolled out Gemini for enterprise. So we have access to Google's Gemini. And in Gemini, there's a tool called Gems, which is just like custom GPT, but it's what Google calls it. And so I created a gem that I gave custom instructions to on how I typically want to do my biweekly update. And then I uploaded like my last 10 updates to it. So it could see like my writing style and the format that I use. From there, I would just record like manually. Whispr Flow AI is the tool I use. You just press a button, record your voice, and I would drop these word blobs into the prompt. And then I just click submit, and then it just formatted the whole thing. Completely blew my mind. This used to take me 2 to 3 hours to do this update.
Yeah.
Now it takes like 15 minutes. as soon as I saw that, I was like blown away. I was like, this makes my life so much easier. And I was like, maybe I could productize this. So that's what I've been working on.
Cool. Yeah. So why don't we see a quick demo?
Yeah. Okay. So this is vibeupdater.com. This is the landing page. I spent some time talking with ChatGPT is like the primary LLM I use. I spent some time with ChatGPT to figure out what this copy would be. What is the outcome I'm trying to drive for PMs? So it's basically speak your update and we'll write it like a product leader. That's like the main thing. And it says Vibe Updater turns your voice into structured audience ready updates. And you can see the typical LLM M dash there.
Yeah.
Saving you time while increasing visibility with stakeholders and leadership. So that's it. Then we just get into the main val props: save time, gain visibility, communicate with impact. Then this next part is just how does it work? Record, process, deliver. This talks about some current and future use cases for it, different types of updates you can do. The feedback here on the landing page, these are actual Slack messages or email replies I've gotten from leaders in my organization about this update. So these are real things, like leaders actually do like this and they actually respond. Our senior director of design actually loves these updates. He's emailed me multiple times.
Nice.
But anyway, just to kind of, show folks that like this does actually get good feedback, and this particular format that we use here. So having said that, this is the main CTA. So you can click that to create an account. I already have an account, so we'll just log in with mine. And there was a little flash of an issue there I got to debug. But anyway, it'll land you on the main updater page. And so this is what it looks like. So I'll give you a quick walkthrough of what this is. So the left-hand side is basically like your navigator, your compass, where you operate out of. What you'll essentially do to record an update is you pick a section. So there's 6 sections, which I'll walk through in a second. And then you click record content. And I'll do a demo here live so you can see. There's only one template at the moment, so it's just one template. And then if you want to go to recent updates, you can, and you can go to settings as well. This format is like the only format today. The reason I prescribe this format here is because I just know it works, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback that leaders like it. And I'll walk through like why they like it. So the first thing is a lot of leaders, it might take them 5 minutes to read the email, or if you post this in Slack, but the reality is they want to spend about 30 seconds or less reading it. So these headlines, these bold, this is ghost text. This is not an actual update. This is ghost text telling you what this section is for, but it's showing you it in the format that it will output. So this bold text is the actual like main takeaway of the bullet. And then for anybody who wants to read the details, they can keep reading it. And every section is formatted that way. And then you'll see the details in each section is just telling you what that section is about and the types of things you would put there. And so that's like the main content page. And then there's a few actions up here. You can look at your transcripts of your recordings. If you want to look at the raw recording or the raw text, you can export it to a rich text file, or you can email it. And the main CTA is just copied, put it wherever you want.
Yeah. So just to double check, basically I would pick, let's say like top level goal progress. I would just dictate something, and then it would format it into this format for me. So it's going to determine what the headline is. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, it does all of the work for you. And if you click record content, it'll record you, and then it'll ask, where do you want to put it? Some people might just click the CTA and just get right into it. You can select the section later, or you can do it before.
Awesome. Yeah, let's give it a try.
Okay.
I'm going to record. Hey, just giving you a quick update on our new smart notification feature. We launched to 10% of users yesterday. Early data shows about a 45% engagement rate in the first 24 hours. We're ramping slowly to monitor for edge case bugs. Nothing major yet, just a couple of users reporting duplicate alerts. We expect to roll out to 100% by Friday. The only thing that might slow us down is needing final sign-off from the security review team. We're hoping to get that today, and if that's delayed, we'll pause rollout. So that's just an example script that I use sometimes when I'm just testing it. And what it's doing now is it's transcribing it. And I didn't pick where it was supposed to go when I clicked record, so now it's asking me. So we're going to put it in top level goals. It's going to take that transcript, transform it into this based off the system prompt, and here's the output. So now it shows this is like the headline, this is like an update on this smart notification feature, and then it took everything that we told it and just put it in a format based off of what the system prompt has.
Cool. Yeah. And then, so do you have different like system prompts almost for each section, or is it pretty similar for the different ones?
Right now, it's just the same. But there was a recent Lenny's podcast where he interviewed a prompt expert, and it was like a awesome episode. And so since then, I've actually got a much better system prompt that I iterated on with ChatGPT quite a bit. And that's on the roadmap to import that, and it should make these updates even better. And then eventually I'd like to make them, to your point, for each section.
Nice. Yeah, that looks great. Cool. So yeah, looks like that works well. I guess main thing I want to know next is just like how you actually went about building this, but anything else you want to add on this side of things before we get into like the behind the scenes part?
No, I mean, this is the main thing. There's a lot like a good PM. I have a to-do list, doing and done. So I do have like things that I want to do. So I got to figure out what's going to come next. There's already some stuff that's in development that's not in production yet that I plan to ship. But this is the main gist, just recording yourself, having it do all the formatting and heavy lifting for you. So you don't have to type anything. It just does all the work for you. You copy paste it and send it to your stakeholders.
Nice. Yeah. By the way, I also did this a lot. I had like a mostly biweekly, sometimes weekly update. And it's like a pretty critical part of being a good PM, I think, is just building a visibility, right? But anyway, yeah, so let's get into the Replit side. So I think what we'll do is maybe just try to ship a feature live, if that sounds good.
Yeah.
Maybe to just explain like what's top of mind for you, maybe what's coming up next from your backlog, and then we'll go through it.
This is really, really early. I've only shared this with like 4 or 5 PMs. For anybody listening, you can check it out. It's vibeupdater.com. It's live if you want to play around with it. But I've only shared it with a few people. And one of the things that I do every time I share it is I ask for feedback. But as I share it with more and more people, I thought it might be good to have a feedback feature within the product that people can just easily tell me how they're liking it, what's maybe a bug they found or an improvement or change they would recommend. And so I thought maybe that's what we could work on today.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Okay, so we're in Replit. This is one of the forks of this. This is a fork of what's currently in production. And you can see I just recently added terms of service and privacy policy to the page. I was doing some testing on Reddit ads for some positioning stuff, and they required terms of service and privacy policy. So I added that. What we'll do next is we'll just go ahead and talk to it about adding a feedback feature. I did go ahead and look into if Replit has these like pre-made integrations. And one of them is with SendGrid, which can actually send emails. So I don't know if I would do it in version 1 of this feature. I might just have the feedback saved to the database. But I think a nice, like, easy enhancement would be just email me whenever I get feedback. So we can try and see if we can get through that today. I haven't done the SendGrid integration yet. But basically, what I typically do is I just do voice to text for everything here. I very rarely type into Replit. I use Whisper AI. There's Super Whispr. There's a bunch of them out there. I think Otter is another one, Otter AI. But the one I use is Whisper AI, so I can just press a key and just tell it what I want to do. I already asked ChatGPT about this earlier. Let me just copy paste this. This prompt says, if I wanted to add a feedback feature to Vibe Updater so that when users are actively using the product and they notice a bug or something they would like to see, they can quickly click a feedback button in the left navigation bar. They can rate the product 1 to 5 stars and then type in their feedback or record it and we'll transcribe it for them. And then they can submit it. I would like this feedback to not only be stored in the database, but also trigger email to me so that I can review the feedback. What would be the easiest way to implement this given that I don't need that since that was for ChatGPT. So I'm just going to edit this a little bit. So let me just modify this a little bit. They can rate it 1 to 5 stars. They can type in or record their feedback. Let me just change this and we'll transcribe it for them. Then they can submit it. I would like this feedback to not only be stored in the database, but also trigger email to me. Let me just do an update to this. For the first iteration of this, let's just do storing the feedback in the database. Once we get that working, then we can add the email capability. One thing I've noticed is and I know, Colin, you talk about this in your class all the time, is you've got to be iterative. So I don't want to tell it to do 5 things at once. I'm just going to ask it to do just the core thing. And because my code base has gotten more complex over time, I noticed a lot of times I need to ask it how it's going to do it first, and then I let it do it. So I'm going to add that here. Please tell me what your plan would be to do this. Please explain it in a concise and clear way to someone who's non-technical. Don't code anything yet. And the don't code anything yet For anybody who doesn't know, you have to end every prompt with that. Otherwise, it might go wild.
Yeah, pretty critical. So just to kind of recap while it's working on this, you kind of give it all the context up front, the full feature, right? So email as well as database submission. You kind of broke it down into phases, right? So your phase one here is database first, and then phase two maybe is email. Then also you're trying to get it to generate a more like a implementation plan on like what files specifically need to change.
Right, exactly.
You mentioned that you use voice to text. I'm just curious about like, is that just for like speed? Do you find that you actually provide better prompts when you're using voice to text? Like I personally don't use voice to text all the time. I use it sometimes. So I'm just curious what you think.
Yeah, it's just fast.
Okay.
And I find it's a lot faster. And I find when I type, sometimes I like limit what I'm going to say just because I'm trying to get it out quickly. But with voice, I don't overthink it. I just kind of tell it everything I'm thinking, and it just tends to be a lot quicker, and it makes sure I don't leave anything out. Like I don't self-restrict like what I'm trying to say when I have to figure out how to type it. So it just makes it a little more free and quick is the reason why I do it.
Cool. And it looks like we have a plan, right?
Yeah, so it just spit back the overview. It says it's going to do the database setup, feedback from the interface, add a feedback button to the left navigation bar, visible when logged in. I'll create a pop-up form with star rating, text area, voice recording option, and submit. It's going to reuse the existing voice recording technology, which is the Whispr endpoint for OpenAI. Automatically transcribe. Users can choose between typing or recording their feedback. This is the backend details. And then simple admin page where you can view. Okay, so I didn't even ask for that, but it knows I need to look at the information in the database somehow. So it's going to create an admin page where you can view all the feedback. So the user experience flow, they click feedback, pop-up opens, user selects rating, and either types or records feedback. Voice feedback gets transcribed, user hits submit, user sees confirmation menu, and then you can review all the feedback in the admin section. I'm going to make one clarification here. So this looks great, but you mentioned adding an admin review system. Where do you plan to place that in the UI so that only an admin can access it? That might be overcomplicating version 1. Don't code anything yet. So I just want to clarify here, because that admin thing, I didn't ask for it, and I think that's like a new page, special types of permissions, could complicate it. Yeah, it says... Yeah. I mean, as people who use AI know, it tends to agree with you. So it's agreeing with me.
Yeah.
But basically it said, yeah, let's going to overcomplicate it. Let's make it just more simple. It's going to save everything in the database. Instead of building an admin interface, I'll make it easier for you to feedback directly through the database or a simple query. Yeah. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I do like incremental. So this approach sounds good. Now that we have the plan, please break it down into key increments so that we can implement one increment at a time, make sure it's working before moving on. Don't code anything yet. So like, as a lot of people who have used these tools know, you have to be like very organized and thoughtful in your approach. I will say as a PM, it really helps you empathize with engineers when you just give them like open-ended requests. So you have to be very like clear and specific. And I found like asking it to do increments really helps eliminate errors in the process, because when you're just starting out, you can just say, like you did in your class, one of the examples was like build a CRM, and it just builds a CRM. But the deeper you get into it, the more, the larger your code base gets, it can't make assumptions as easily anymore because there's other things, everything is connected. So the deeper I've gotten, I've realized I have to be more specific with what I'm asking for. Okay, so here's the increment 1 is the database schema and backend foundation. 2 is basic feedback from the UI, or the feedback form in the UI. 3rd is recording, and then 4th is just polishing it. Cool, this looks good. So yes, please go ahead and do increment 1, and please do not continue to subsequent increments until we align on the increment we're working on. One thing that I've noticed is like, just like you have to say, don't code anything yet, I also have to tell it to not move on without me, because sometimes I'll break something down like this and it'll just run through all of them, which is kind of not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like, how much time do you think you spend on like the planning part versus the feature implementation? Like, how long does it take to implement a feature?
Yeah, honestly, the planning takes most of the time for me. I would say planning and then debugging, but the more time I spend planning, the less debugging I have to do. It's kind of like honestly, like anybody who works on a tech team, you'll spend months in discovery, technical design, user interface design. By the time you build it, you've kind of figured out most of the details. So it's kind of the same thing here. Like sometimes I want to build something and then I get ready to prompt Replit and then I'm like, wait, I haven't like figured out what I want it to look like. I haven't figured out the experience. Like with Vibe Updater, I did not know I wanted the left navigation bar until I got into it. So having that planning process up front forces you to think about what UI do you want, what experience do you want. In this particular case, like when people want to record their feedback, we haven't talked to Replit about, is that going to be a separate button? Is it going to auto submit once they're done? Like there's some UI elements that we haven't talked about yet. So the deeper in planning you can be and the more specific you can be, the better you get.
Yeah. How often do you find that like you kind of allow the AI to make its own choices versus, trying to be super specific with the prompt? And then also as a follow-up to that, like how often are you successful when you allow the AI to make its own choices versus the planning?
Yeah, so one of the things we were talking about before we recorded is like the agent, like for folks watching on the left-hand side, you can see it's talking to you. It's telling you what it's doing. So a lot of times that's where I can see the assumptions it's making or the like decisions it's making on its own. Kind of like I was saying before, when you first start, you can be very like open-ended and it'll make assumptions for you. But the bigger your code base gets, the more complicated it gets. You can't let it make decisions for you because it'll screw things up. For example, I was building, so the current update here is the weekly update. I'm working on the next feature for Vibe Updater, which is just a single quick update. Like if your manager says, hey, what's the update on this? Or your manager says, hey, the CEO wants an update on this. What's a quick like version of that? And when I was building that, Replit was building like a whole nother like arbitrarily unique way to build that rather than working off of the infrastructure that I already had. So I spent like an hour building this. There's all these bugs. I had to roll everything back. And then I had to sketch out like with Replit, like, hey, we already have all these components for the weekly update. There's a lot of that we can reuse for the quick update. And so I had to be very clear about like what the existing architecture is. Sometimes I would ask it, like, how did you do this? And then I would say, great, that's how you did it. I want you to do it the same way for this new feature. So like I've had to get a lot more prescriptive over time.
Yeah. I've had the same experience. I think probably everyone who's used these tools has had the same experience. In fact, if you read like engineers using these tools, primarily what they're doing is like the same thing we're doing, but just to a further degree where they're automating their own work where they've done like the planning and it's just implementing like very small, like say snippets of code. It might even be like just tab complete, right? Rather than like, the agent view. And it always goes back kind of the same thing, which is like the more freedom you kind of give it, I feel like the higher probability of it just like going kind of off the rails, right?
Yes.
But yeah, it looks like maybe we have the first iteration done. We'll see, maybe.
Yeah, let's take a look. So it says completed increment 1, created a feedback table in the database, added database methods for saving and retrieving, created an API endpoint so it's just API/feedback. So it can post and it can get, which makes sense. We can add to it and retrieve it. Added proper authentication and validation, and tested database operations. The foundation is now ready. The feedback table stores ratings, text, feedback type, and timestamps. I don't know that we need type. Doesn't really matter, but I guess that's fine. And the API endpoints require auth and validate to input data properly. Okay, yeah, there's nothing really to see here. We could look at the database, I guess, but I'm not too worried about it. This is pretty simple. So it just basically created the API endpoint and the database. So I think that's fine. So yeah, let's move on to the next increment. Remember to not move on to increment 3 until we have aligned on the implementation of increment 2.
So what does it usually look like when you're using Replit? It seems like a lot of planning.
Yeah.
When you're actually going through the implementation, it's mostly like check, approve, and then when you have bugs, debugging. Like, how would you say you split up your time, between these kind of 3 steps of that?
So ChatGPT is like my main LLM that I use. And I know there's like a lot of opinions, like is Claude better? Is Gemini better? I mean, they're all kind of better at different things, but like for planning, I think I don't get too hung up on that. So I use ChatGPT to kind of do like the outline, the framework, like the milestones. For example, when I was coming up with a better system prompt, I was doing that all in ChatGPT. And I took like the Lenny's podcast episode that I talked about, one of the documents that they reference in that, and I threw it all in there. And I was like, hey, like, what are the like 5 key takeaways? And then let's take my existing system prompt and make it 10 times better. And then kind of worked it out. Then once I had that, I have it done and it's on the roadmap to add that in. But like all of that, like thinking and prepping and planning and brainstorming and thought partnership is all with ChatGPT or Claude, whatever you use. I do that outside of Replit. Then at the very end, I'll say, great, give me a prompt for Replit with everything we talked about. And then from there, I literally just copy paste it right into Replit. And when I'm talking with ChatGPT, I'm often not typing there either. I'm just voice to text there. So once I have it, I copy paste it, I drop it into here. And then once I put it into Replit, I say like, hey, let's break it down into increments. And then all the stuff you just saw me do, I do that every time here. So it can be a little frustrating when you're trying to move quickly. But you'll realize, like we've talked about, if you try to move too quick, you don't give it like very detailed instructions, you'll end up with a lot of issues. So you kind of have to purposefully slow yourself down a little bit and work on one piece at a time, because that ends up being faster than just letting it go loose on its own. And then, yeah, like the quickest part is Replit just writing the code for you. Most of the work is before and after the prompt.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see a bug later on. We could chat more about debugging, but I'm curious, you mentioned you had a different project before that you tried to build and like, yeah, they eventually, I think, kind of give up on it. So one is like, what happened with that project? What were the bugs like? Why did you end up in that state? And then two, are you doing anything differently now than you did previously?
Yeah. So the first one was called Card AI, and it was basically personalized greeting cards. And I've had this idea for long before I took your class. I probably had this idea like a year or two ago when AI started taking off. I was at Target, which is a department store in the US. I think they might have them in Canada too. And I was getting greeting cards and I had to get all these cards for like Mother's Day and my wife and I's anniversary and all these cards. And I was like, man, it'd be great if one, these could be personalized. So, which cards at the store aren't, you kind of have to find the one you like. And two, could I just have these like done so I don't have to go to the store? They can be mailed to me or I can print them out, something like that. So that first idea that's what it was. And in your class, I built the MVP of that, which was very simply a 5-question survey. It asks like, who is the card for? What's your relationship? What's the occasion? Give me one anecdote about this person, and then it would write like the text for that. But what got really complicated really fast was the UI for like, what is that card going to actually look like? What I realized is I'd have to do a ton of work to really give it a lot of structure to actually build a artistic looking card. And something like that really can't be open-ended if you want it to work well in a repeatable way. So you'd have to really structure, like you'd have to work the user through like what type of card do they want, like what kind of style, what's their preferences and all of that. And then even after you do all of that, you'd have to have like a really nice graphical UI to show what that card would look like. Tried that with Replit. It looks like not great, frankly. I don't think that's Replit's strong suit. We talked about that. I was going to do it in V0, which tends to do better with that. My suspicion was I was going to end up in Cursor, and it was going to be a long, long process for me to actually figure out how to do that. So that's kind of where I was like, all right, this is probably too complicated for me at this stage. Maybe I'll go back to it later. But that was too complicated given the like graphical UI aspect of it. And so I figured, rather than continuing to go down that rabbit hole and maybe not ever coming out of it, I kind of paused on that, and at that time is when I came up with this idea.
Got it. Okay, yeah. I would agree. Like, well, one is Replit doesn't seem to always be the best with UI as compared to some of the other tools. But yeah, so you had to do like some 3D modeling basically, right? And like try to like overlay the card almost. And yeah, so that can be kind of complicated for these tools to manage.
Yeah. And also like part of the idea was you could have the card printed, cut, and mailed to you. So, it might be a little expensive for the final product like that, but I figured there's probably a market that would be willing to pay a decent amount of money to have all of that done for them. And then they get the card in the mail, they sign it, hand sign it, and give it to whoever.
Right.
But that, just that whole second piece of like logistically printing, cutting, mailing, like that's a whole nother, that's outside of Replit basically,
Yeah.
So that was a whole nother piece to like bring this vision to life. It was going to be quite the investment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're back with another update, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah. So basically it says it created the form, added the button, added the feedback. Okay. So one of the things I've realized in Replit, at least in my case, I don't know about others, is while it does tend to build with a responsive UI, meaning it works on mobile and desktop, it doesn't always do the best job. So that's what it's saying here is it did the feedback button for desktop and mobile. When I first built the desktop version of this, I sent it to a friend. And then he was like, hey, have you tried this on mobile? And I was like, no. And I opened it up on my phone. It looked horrible. So one way to check really quickly is what it looks like mobile is just, at least if you're on Replit, you can just thin your screen like this. You can also do mobile preview. So this is just another window. Now I can see what it looks like on mobile. So you could just open up another, I forget how I did it. I think it's, open up a new tab, and then you can set the settings for it, and it'll show it mobile. So this is what it looks like on on an iPhone, I think, one of the iPhone versions. And then so it creates the hamburger for you and everything. So that's like one tip that I've had to learn the hard way. And then, it connected to the API with validation. So it gave me increment 2 saying it works. So let's see if it works. So we're going to log in. Let's go here. And we have an error. Okay. Or a bug.
Perfect.
All right. So usually what I do here is I just screenshot this. My first attempt is just, here's the screenshot of the bug. Tell me what's wrong. Okay, we just encountered this bug. Please take a look. Tell me what you think it is and why. Let's do that before we code anything. So don't code anything yet. Okay. Usually with initial bugs, it's not too much of an issue. If I get stuck in a debugging loop, there's a lot of back and forth because it doesn't always figure it out. So let's see what this is. Okay. I can see exactly what's happening. Replit device, don't let this fool you. It will say, I can see exactly what's happening a lot. It doesn't always get it right, but we'll assume it did here. The use state is not defined in line 49. I added a new variable, but I never imported use state from React. Okay. Okay, so it's telling me here, the fix, I need to add use state to the React imports, blah, blah, blah. I can see there are already hooks being imported, so I just need to add it to that list. The simple oversight, common mistake. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, head and fix that. So just for people who are not technical, I don't understand half of this. Like, I know what hooks are, and I kind of understood like generally what's happening here, but I don't actually like fully understand what's going on. And, and I'm not technical. So just for people who are wondering.
Yeah. One other thing to add here is when Replit gives you an answer like this one, or any AI coding tool, and you ask it to explain it, you can see like you got the explanation back here. That's based on the context that the agent has. So like the files that it's looked at previously, if that makes sense, kind of like its memory. One other thing you can do if you want to be sure is you can ask it to look at the files again and create a plan. So that way it's not like, let's say it's looked at some of the relevant files, but not all of the relevant files. There's a bug, and you say, can you fix it? The plan that it comes up with is going to be based on its memory, not all files. So you can say like, examine all the relevant files before you come back with a plan or something like that. And what you should see is the tool calls, right? You can see like normally when it's like opening files or updating files. So it should show you a bunch of like open file tool calls before coming back with the plan. And that's how it actually looked at the files versus just used its memory. But it's like one other small thing. If you ever get like a hairy bug that you can't fix, then you kind of have to force it to like actually do things. And like you said, Pat, like it will 100% lie to you, right? It will just make up stuff like, this is a common problem. I know how to fix it. Don't worry.
Right.
And you ask it to fix it, and you're another error again and again and again and again. Right. So,
yeah. I'm stuck in that on the other branch or the other fork of this project right now. But so basically, you said just add to the prompt. Look at relevant files.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And what you want to see is that it has those tool calls, right? Where you see like it says like, open the file.
Like this one, opens client.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it's not opening files, then you know that it's just using what it already remembers or knows, which could be some subset of your total project, right? It might not be everything. Yeah. Like if it edited one file, introduced a bug, and there's another file it hasn't seen that is related to the file that you just introduced the bug in, it will try to fix it in the one that it's aware of. Right. And it won't even bother looking at the other one. until you eventually push it far enough, right? Like you're like a lot of what you do is like you say like no, keep trying, keep looking, blah, 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 like prompts like
Yes.
this. But you can kind of push it from the beginning to make a better plan.
That's like a really great pro tip because that's like I was mentioning earlier, I'm building this other update version and it didn't look at the first version. It just kind of went
Right.
off on its own. And if I had said, like, look at the weekly update files to architect this new format, I might have avoided a lot of bugs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, it looks like yours is fixed or maybe fixed, right?
Yeah, let's check. So let me log in again and let's see. Okay, there's the feedback button. Okay, so I got a little success notification. I logged in. Okay, so here's the feedback button. So share your feedback. It even got this cool little animation. It kind of automatically highlights the stars. So, oh, and then it put in a little cool thing. Awesome. We're thrilled that you love Vibe Updater. Oh, it even prompts the user. This is great. Like asking the user, you'll see this on LinkedIn or Twitter. At the end of a post, someone will say like, what do you think? And that
Right.
that's all intentional, right? To get people to respond. So I'm curious if I do one, we're sorry to hear that. Oh, this is cool. Thanks for the feedback. And every single one, like any suggestions, what's working well. So we don't have the voice to text here. So I'll just say, this looks great. Okay, so let's submit, make sure it works. Another error. Okay. So I know we're going to fix this error, but one of the things that I've just noticed with this product, and I'm sure people run into, is like you have to test, and not even just test like what you just did, but make sure what you just did didn't break something else. Because I just added the quick update feature, which is not live here yet. I was doing that last night and it broke the weekly update. So
Yeah.
like I was about to deploy it to prod last night and I was like, let me check the weekly update and it was broke. So definitely
Yeah.
breaks sometimes.
Yeah, you have to be pretty careful. I mean, if there's any engineers listening to this, usually like the way you solve that is through like unit tests or other type of like test coverage, right? It can be kind of complicated to get AI to write tests for you that are good. Oftentimes it like writes a bunch of unit tests that are really not relevant. So I think manual testing for small products is probably still the best way.
I wonder, yeah, that makes me wonder like these tools that like, I know the engineers on my team do unit testing. I wonder if there could be like a plugin or an integration that Replit or these other tools could have where it helps you. I mean, you said AI doesn't write tests very well, but I don't know, maybe someday it will, because that could be hugely beneficial.
It's actually like, I think writing tests is very similar to what you're doing here. If you ask the AI to write unit tests for you, the quality of those tests will be poor.
Okay.
So the same way that you had to plan all this stuff out, you also still have to plan the tests. And to some degree have an understanding of like what good unit testing looks like, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
I think it's very hard for someone who's never written a unit test before and knows what they are to just ask Replit to add unit tests and for them to be good enough that they're useful.
Right. So it's like another one of those things you'd have to spend some time outside of Replit to like figure out what those tests are, get them well written, and then you could bring it back in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the whole point is that tests are like, it's code that is checking the edge cases of your other code. So it means you have to understand what those edge cases are. Right. Like it's intrinsic in the idea. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. So I just screenshotted this bug. I dropped it in the prompt and I said, I ran into this error when clicking submit feedback on the feedback form. Please let me know what you think the issue is and why. Don't code anything yet. Depending on what the issue is, sometimes I might be able to figure out what it is. It looks like it's something with the API for feedback, but let's see. Classic fetch API usage error. Okay, so just something of how it's using it, looking at the error stack trace. It's happening in these lines. The problem I wrote, but the API request function likely expects either, okay. I need to look at how API request is defined and how it's used elsewhere to understand the correct parameter structure. The function signature is probably different.
Yeah. So this is another good example of it re-implementing something because the way Replit builds projects is it has a file called the query client. So on the client-side application, it's like a reusable thing for making API requests to your server.
Okay.
And in this instance, it didn't use that query client. It re-implemented a new method of creating API requests, just using fetch. And so this is another one where like it just didn't have context, and it's saying like, hey, if I knew how to use the query client, then I would use that. It would probably work. So like the same thing, same problem. Oftentimes the same problem, right? Just it didn't know that there was already an existing pattern, and it's not following that pattern here.
Should I have said look at relevant files here?
Yeah, I want you to give that a try now. Just say like, look at relevant files and come back with a plan.
Okay, look at relevant files and come back with a plan. Don't code.
Hopefully we get some like of those file read actions. That way you know that it's actually looking at the files.
Yeah. Okay, opens query client. Okay, it's opening this page, or this TS file, this TS file.
Yeah, so it's probably looking at other usages. It's looking for examples.
Yeah.
In the existing code.
And I know that I haven't used Lovable. I know that's a popular one, but from what I understand, Lovable doesn't, like, it hides the code from you. I don't know if it tells you what it's doing here, but I like that it tells me what it's doing.
Yeah, it's certainly a different experience. I think if you kind of put them on a spectrum, Replit is more technical, kind of like more like a power user tool, you might say.
Okay.
And Lovable hides a lot of the complexity from the user.
Right.
Which I think is better for people who are like brand new, right?
Right.
Or they would get intimidated by like the technical aspects. But the funny thing is, it doesn't actually remove them.
Right.
So if you have a bug, the
just
bug
can't
still
see it.
exists in this. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. So sometimes I find Lovable harder to use for that reason,
Right.
than just using the like tools that give you access to everything.
Because even if you're, like me, I'm not technical. Sometimes I take what Replit tells me, I put it into ChatGPT, and I'll say, explain this, and then
Right.
it'll help me figure it out. But if it doesn't give me access to those details, then I can't even look into it.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically said correction strategy. Option 1, use API requests correctly. Option 2, use fetch directly following existing pattern. It's saying it's going to use option 1 since it's already important and provides better error handling. That's interesting. It doesn't want to use the existing pattern.
I think it's existing in this file. It's kind of confusing language that it chose to use. The API client is existing, generally speaking, like it already has been used elsewhere. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, please follow your recommendation.
While it's working on that, I'm just curious, like, have you found that you become more technical by using these tools? Like, do you feel like you have a better understanding of what's happening, or you've learned a bunch of stuff as you've been building?
So yes, short answer, yes. I don't understand everything. Like, we're reading these, half of it I get, half of it I don't. Like, I didn't know what hooks were until a couple months ago. We use them at work. We had some webhooks that we were doing with Plaid, which is a fintech partner. But yeah, like, even in here, I learned it. And then probably like the most important thing that I learned in your class was the client server database like framework, because one of the first issues I ran into Vibe Updater is like, I was having an issue with it retrieving data. And I was like, hey, have you set up a database? Because it seems like you're missing data. I wonder if you're only storing it on the server. And sure enough, that's what was happening.
Right.
So if I didn't know that just basic concept, I mean, that's like the first 5 minutes of your class. The first video, I think, is that framework. But that was like very, very important in just understanding how this thing works.
Right. Yeah. Having that mental model. Or you can ask better questions and understand a little bit more what's happening.
Right. And like when you see it telling you what it's doing, sometimes I've noticed it like not doing it the way I would want, or like it's giving me so much context on what it's doing that I'm able to see if it's going down the wrong path.
Right.
Cool. Okay, so let's try this real quick. So let's log in. It says it's done. So I'm just going to test it again to see if it's working. So let's go to feedback. This looks great. And cool. Okay, so it submitted it. Yes, the form successfully submitted, and I got a confirmation notification. Let's see what it does next. I didn't tell it, let's move on to the next increment, but I was just curious what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just confirming. Yeah, one thing I've noticed is it likes for me to tell it when something works, and it'll say, let me update the project documentation. So it like records when it finishes things, and sometimes I'll get so deep into like a feature implementation, I'll say recap the like 7 milestones and tell me which ones we've done and which ones we haven't. And it'll recap it and it'll give me like, completed, not completed. So like it tracking what we're doing can be helpful. Okay, increment 2 is now complete. Ready for the next increment. Okay, do the next increment.
Yeah, maybe just for the sake of time, we'll pause on that one.
Okay.
Just curious, if you open up the database, do you actually have any, like, do you have that record in the database there?
Let's see. I don't open the database, admittedly, that much. Let's see.
In the feedback.
Yeah,
there you go.
There it is. Yeah, this looks
Perfect.
Great.
Yeah, so full circle. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, so yeah, any other kind of closing tips, tricks, best practices, anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I think that's the main thing. It's like planning, context, increments, break it down. It feels slow, but it'll pay off in the long run. That's my biggest learning so far.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. And is there anywhere folks can like find you online or help you out at all?
Sure. I'm just on LinkedIn, Pat Bergstresser on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, or X as it's called now, I guess. Pat the PM. I used to be more active there. I'm still lurking, I guess you could say. I'm not posting and engaging as much, but I'm still there as well.
Well, Pat, thanks for coming on. I think you shared a lot of good stuff, and like I think it's fun to see, you're like definitely on the more technical side, but you started on the less technical side. So that's cool. Yeah, looking forward to see where you land with this one.
Yeah, awesome. And if people feel free, if you're watching this, you want to check out Vibe Updater, use the feedback tool. It'll be live by the time you guys watch this.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thanks, Pat.
Thanks.
See you next one.